Hi everybody and welcome back to my little YouTube channel. I'm hoping that you can all hear me okay because it's extremely windy up here in Buxton in Great Britain. So I do apologise in advance if this microphone is a little bit swishy, if that's the word. But if you're new to this channel, my name's Amanda. I'm a diagnosed autistic adult. I'm 40 years old. I was diagnosed with autism a few years ago, and the reason I'm making this content, the reason I decided to make this channel, to make these videos, is to hopefully help you guys out there. You might have anxiety, depression, you might be autistic, you might think you've got autism, or you might even be waiting for an autism assessment. The waiting list for an autism assessment in the UK can sometimes be 3 years or over, so it can be a painful wait. So hopefully, in the meantime, while you're waiting, or even if you just need a little bit of support along the way, these videos will help you. So what exactly is autism? Autism is a neurodevelopmental condition. It's a genetic condition. That means that it's usually passed on by one of the immediate members of your family. It's a condition that we're born with, and it's a condition that stays with us throughout our entire lives. And it can affect autistic people greatly. Autism's a spectrum. You've probably heard the saying, if you've seen one person with autism, you've seen one person with autism. We're all different. So we all have different strengths and different weaknesses, just like everybody else in society. How do you go about getting an autism diagnosis? You might think that you're autistic. You might have wondered for a while, or you might be watching this video and just wondering whether the symptoms fit what you're experiencing. And I'm going to go into that in this video. And it starts by identifying the common signs and symptoms of autism first. So let's start there. So what are some of the most common signs and symptoms of autism? The first one is difficulty recognising and understanding other people's emotions. And that can be a big one for us as autistic people. The world around us can actually feel like an incredibly difficult place to understand. The feel, the touch, the taste, the texture, the bright lights, just absolutely everything. And add to that understanding other people, when people are happy, when people are crying, when people make jokes, when they're sarcastic. It can be so confusing, and it's one of the main ones that really affects me. Another common symptom of autism is feeling really anxious in social situations, and that one also really affects me badly. I just hate being around large groups of people, or in hustle and bustle and large crowds of people where everybody's expecting something from me, trying to make conversation and small talk, and I'm having to maintain eye contact, and I'm consciously thinking about what I'm saying and how I'm reacting and where I'm looking and what I'm doing. And it's like I've got this conscious awareness of my body all the time in order to try and fit in and not seem autistic. Another common symptom of autism is preferring solitude. So, for example, take where I am now. I'm just out in the wilderness, away from anybody. I think I've seen one person so far this morning. And there's just birds. I can feed the birds. I love birds so much, and I can just be around nature and wildlife. And a lot of autistic people prefer solitude. We prefer to be in our own company, doing our own thing in the peace and quiet, just away from civilization. Another common sign of autism is a difficulty keeping and maintaining eye contact. For me, eye contact can feel really difficult because it feels like when you're looking into my eyes, you're looking into my soul and you're reading every thought and feeling. That might sound bizarre, but it really is a real anxiety-provoking, stressful situation to me. So if you can relate and you find eye contact to be a little bit stressful and sometimes you feel like you're straining it in social situations, it could be that you have autism. Another common sign and symptom of autism is a difficulty initiating, and maintaining friendships and relationships. And this is because of the social communication barriers that we face. We're quite blunt sometimes, so sometimes we may offend people and they may dismiss our friendship as a result. It can be really difficult for us to have no anxiety in social situations, so to interact in groups of people, and that's a real common thing when you have social circles. You sort of need to be able to, or you're expected to be able to, be around groups of friends and things, and sometimes that can be really difficult for us as autistic people. So sometimes just having the confidence to initiate conversation, knowing what to say, getting tongue-tied, wondering whether we're offending somebody, and just having that total anxiety in that situation can deter us and stop us from making friends. And sometimes if we do make friends, it can be really difficult to keep our friends, because if we say something to them that's rude by accident and we don't mean to, it can offend them and they can unfriend us. Another sign and symptom of autism is difficulty expressing to other people how we're thinking and feeling, and that can be a big one for me. Most of them can, actually. Sometimes when we're feeling sad or upset or stressed, just trying to find the words to describe those emotions to doctors, nurses, friends, families, loved ones can be really challenging. We feel the thoughts, and probably we feel them much stronger than people that don't have autism. But we just can't articulate the words to describe those feelings. And as a result of that, it can lead to immense amounts of frustration, so much frustration, and that can result in a meltdown. Another common sign and symptom of autism is coming across as very blunt or indeed quite rude to people. That's because sometimes we can say and we can take things that people say quite literally. And our way of expressing and communicating to people can be quite different to everybody else. So sometimes we might say something to somebody and we might not mean it rude. For example, if somebody says to me, "Does my bum look big in this?" and I truly believe that it does, the likelihood is asking me is probably not the right way to go about it, because I'm going to give you a straightforward answer and tell you yes. The next sign of autism is having a fondness or a keenness for routines and rituals. Now, many autistic people, we love to pre-plan our day, and we love to pre-plan it hours, days, weeks in advance, sometimes months or years, depending on the person. And if plans change, it can be particularly stressful. For instance, if a plan changes, I'll either go into a total meltdown or I just won't budge. So if you can relate to that symptom, maybe you could be autistic. Another sign or symptom of autism is special interests. Now, my special interests have changed over the years. The one special interest that's remained with me is birds. I absolutely love birds. It's got me into a little bit of trouble in the past feeding them, and that can happen to a lot of autistic people. A lot of our special interests can unfortunately get us into trouble. But a lot can be positive, because if we go into a career pathway that involves our special interests, we can excel in those areas. So ask yourself, are you particularly interested in any particular subject? And could you be autistic? Now that we've discussed some of the more common signs and symptoms of autism, I'm hoping it's given you a better idea with regards to what autism is and how it presents. And you might be asking yourself, am I autistic? Some of the things that she's just said I can relate to, and now I know that information, how do I go about obtaining a diagnosis? And that's what I'm going to be discussing in the rest of this video. So how would you go about obtaining an autism diagnosis? Let's find out. So before you have your appointment for autism, before you're sent for a one-to-one face-to-face assessment with a neurodevelopmental assessor, a psychologist or a psychiatrist, they send you a paper copy, a paper questionnaire. It's quite a thick questionnaire, a little tiny document, and it asks you loads of questions about your life. It starts by asking you questions from your childhood, such things like, how did you make friends when you was a child? As you've grown up, how have your relationships blossomed? Have you had any difficulties in school and at work? Do you have any other pre-existing medical conditions such as anxiety and depression? And once you've completed that questionnaire, you send it back. And if the assessor believes that there is a possibility you could indeed be autistic, they then will send you for a follow-up, face-to-face, one-to-one autism examination. So what sort of questions are going to be asked of you at that autism assessment appointment? So the assessor is going to ask you how you grew up as a child, whether you interacted with other children. Sometimes it's a good idea to take a parent or a guardian or somebody with you that knew you while you was a baby, as a child, as you was growing up, because the assessor will be asking for things like, did you as a child interact with them? So if the parent or guardian or a teacher or a loved one tried to initiate play with you as a child, did you reciprocate that and did you play back with them? Or did you prefer to be on your own, just in the peace and quiet, and play with your own toys? They'll be asking things like, did you communicate with others? At what age did you start talking? Was there any language or communication delays? And then they'll be asking you things about social interactions as you've got older, relationship problems, work-related problems, and they'll be looking at your medical history, the information that your doctor or the hospital or nurse has sent, and they'll be weighing up everything to see whether you fit the criteria for an autism diagnosis. You might be wondering, once you've had the assessment and you're sat in the examination office, are you going to be told straight away that you have autism? I was. So the assessor, after about an hour and a half, I think it might have been up to about 2 hours. Sometimes the appointments can be 3-4 hours long. It just depends. The assessor will ask you, do you want to know the results now? Do you want me to inform you now verbally whether you have autism or you don't? Or would you like me to send them via a written report? I opted to know straight away, and I'm sure you guys will want to know straight away as well. After all, we've waited so long to find out who we are as people that we just want to know, don't we? We want to understand why we're fundamentally feeling different on this alien planet, alien-like planet. So the assessor told me straight away, it might be different for you. They might send it written. It's worthwhile just asking them on the day. But I'm pretty sure in the United Kingdom, they usually tell you at your assessment appointment. And you might be wondering as well, what happens after your assessment appointment? Am I entitled to any follow-up assessments? In the United Kingdom, and around about a few years ago, I was actually entitled to one follow-up appointment assessment after my initial autism diagnosis, and I believe it's still the same for adults today. For children it's probably difficult. You'll have to have a look on the NHS websites and ask your GP and ask the assessor and the department that you're going to for your assessment. But for adults anyway, usually we have our first initial autism assessment, and that's followed by one follow-up appointment to make sure that everything's okay and you're coping with your diagnosis. And then probably like me, you've waited all those years and you're wondering, well, what happens after I've had that last assessment? What happens when I've used up all of my appointments and I'm not able to have any more support? Now, The assessor will send a report back to your GP detailing that you are indeed autistic, or even if you aren't, and it will outline some of the struggles that you have and some of the things that are positive to your diagnosis as well, such as certain special interests, for example, self-awareness, for instance. And if you require further support, you're usually signposted onto your GP, and the GP will then offer you services such as counselling. And I'm not sure about your area. My area is Derbyshire. Sometimes we can be a little bit limited in the UK for autistic adult support, but it's always worthwhile having a little look on the NHS website and the Google and asking your GP and your hospital services, is there any local support services for autistic adults in my area? Before we finish up on this video, I just want to add that the assessor at the beginning of your appointment will likely inform you that after they've formulated a diagnosis for your condition, it might be that you're not autistic. It might be that you have anxiety or depression, for example. And they'll indeed tell you at the end of your appointment if they've found one of these alternative conditions, and they can then signpost you to GP support or hospital support for further help and advice. So I want you to know that if you feel that you indeed have autism and you're waiting for an autism appointment, it's not all as scary and daunting as it seems. And usually you're sat in a room on your own, and you can bring a loved one with you or a friend, and you're with one assessor usually. It might be different where you are, but with me it was just one assessor. And it's a pretty chilled, laid back experience. They're pretty understanding, don't forget, because they're dealing with autistic people all the time. So you're definitely in safe company. They definitely understand us. So please don't feel anxious about going to obtain an autism diagnosis. You're in really safe hands. Now, once you are diagnosed with autism, the benefits are you're covered in England anyway under the Equality Act 2010. So although it's absolutely fine to stay self-diagnosed and there's nothing wrong with that, it is perfectly up to you. There are benefits to having an official diagnosis. You do get support from work agencies and other establishments with regards to your autism. So think about it, talk to family and friends. Hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please consider hitting like, commenting and subscribing, and I shall see you in my next vlog. Cheerio!